Hello, listeners. You are listening to Que Madre en Bienestar CCC. You're here with the lovely Ali Cortez and Ana Rosa Rizo Centino. We are missing our lovely sister Siobhan Hoover, but she will be with us next episode. And just to let you all know, Ali won't be with us for the month of May, but she will be back, she promises, in June. so, um, yeah, today we're going to be talking about what would we in our current uh, age and with what we are now, what we know, what would we tell and communicate to our younger selves when we were in our 20s and early 30s?
That's a freaking awesome topic.
Well, you thought of it, so that makes sense.
The first is give yourself kudos. Oh my gosh. I think this leads me to think I was like, okay, so who was I in my mid 20s, early 30s? Like, who was I? Who are you? Describe us. Describe it to us, Anna. Who are you at that time?
Very angry. I was very angry. Um, and trying to do a million things at once. Uh, Thinking that if I just did enough, I would feel better. Um, and I never got to that point.
Um,
How about you?
yeah. I could definitely relate to the anger, right? I definitely was very angry and I was so disconnected from myself that I didn't know. There was a lot of things that I was doing, but I wasn't conscious that I was so angry about it. So I was coping in ways that were very unhealthy. And, I didn't do a lot of things. I actually was kind of the opposite. I was very stagnant with, um, just like my my life and like being like taking it very purposeful, like having an intentional life. Like I was actually not doing that much. I think I just had too much time on my hands. And I look back and I'm like, oh gosh, if I could, all that time, I could have just been doing X, Y, and Z and doing this and doing this. And so I think that, it's interesting, right? Like our different journeys and just going back on like, yeah, I was definitely angry, but I was sitting with it so much and not because I didn't know I was angry. So yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting to go back. Like, how are you feeling right now as you're thinking about yourself in your like mid 20s, early 30s?
I wish I had started therapy sooner. I would definitely ask my younger self to go to therapy sooner. Um, I would ask myself to be more introspective. Um, I would ask myself to enjoy who I am, like, and to appreciate myself and love myself and see myself as beautiful then, because I don't think I did. Yeah, all of those things.
I definitely can relate to a lot of that too. Right? Like it's like I use the word I wish, and I know that it's like, well, we can't change it and we can heal from it. So I think that's definitely like a big component of this episode of like we we're gonna go back and we know that we can't change it. We are in these healing journeys, right? And so like I look back and I'm like, gosh, mid 20s, early 30s, like there was transitioning through it. It was kind of fast. Like my mid 20s, I think I was like very just again just coping and like I just if I go back and I'm like, why did I do the things that I did? Like the things that I judge myself, thinking about my my former self. Um I did it because I just wanted to be loved. Like I was there was so much stuff that was unresolved from my childhood that I just wanted to be loved. I wanted to be treated with dignity. I wanted to be shown the kindness that I had just learned to give and give and give. And I think at my like mid 20s, I was just at that point very desperate for that. And so I think that led to desperation and like desperate movidas, which no, no. So then that left me very vulnerable and just very open to, como dice mamá, gente con colmillo, you know, like
Mm.
people who can see that and can use that into their advantage.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I was much more of a social butterfly than I am now, and I really loved having lots of friends. Whereas now, even though I still would say I have lots of friends, I value more quality over quantity, like just having some trusted people that I know have my back through the hardest things. Because I have been through the hardest times. Yeah. And so like the people that I turn to in those times are the ones that like I I wish that I had known them sooner. It's like with you, I wish I had met you so much sooner than I actually did. Because I just want people who are healthy and good for me now. I don't need the parandera friends. I just, like, I mean, it's fine to go to parandera, like to be at parties sometimes because we also need to express joy, but um, I'm not out in I'm not out in the partying streets that much anymore. Um, yeah, so I value just having people that I can actually trust and not just that are around to be around.
Oh yeah. Oh my God. And same. I can only imagine. I can only imagine if I was more open and more receptive to like, I can only imagine like if I had connected with you in my like mid 20s, like it takes one person to really revolutionize your life, right? Like you need someone that in close proximity that brings in like that authenticity and that like that love, that support. Like, ooh, I'm like it would have just been I totally different, right? Totally different. And I'm grateful that now we found each other. I also know that's like, oh, my soul just like and Nell's that's like, oh, that would have been so amazing, right? So like that to me is just like, okay, I'm una herida. There's a wound there, right? Because I'm like, oh, that medicina would have been beautiful, right? In that healing journey. So I'm really because of that, I'm like, really grateful that that it's happening now. And I think that's something that I try to do connecting from like my past and my present is to when I go like, oh, like I didn't have this or I could have done this. That's like and that also launched me in a direction, right? By spirit, following spirit, surrendering, having faith to now have this and that brings up more of that gratitude like now I have this, right? And so I think that's a lot of like our intuition and like that special gift of saying like we can travel back to the past and bring that medicina back, right? And say like we can play with that as well. So I love that we're talking about this because like that's kind of what we're doing today. It's like we're going back and like infusing more of that medicina we have now to that part that sometimes I feel like ashamed about.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was talking to a friend yesterday and she felt really bad that she gives people so much trust from the beginning and like she thinks the best of people. Overall, I would say that's good, but just experience has shown me to smell manipulation like 1,000 miles away. Because the thing with manipulative people is they're really good at it. So when you're younger, it takes you a while to catch on. Now I can totally like tell the people that are trying to manipulate me. So back then I would have been like, look out for these things. And some of it is actually pointers that when I look back, my mom even would tell me about it when I was in high school. And she was also worried about what kind of friends I was making in high school. And sometimes moms actually know what they're talking about. So, but sometimes for one way, for one reason or another, we have to learn the hard way.
Yeah, yeah. That's why it's hard to see our babies, right? It's like, oh, they're gonna be doing this, and so going back, and I now have so much appreciation also for like, los consejos that my mom would give me. And I'd be like, tú no sabes nada, no la conoces. Like, she's there for me. And my mom's like, she's going to stab your back.
And then it happens, and you're like, oh, yeah, you told me.
But I'm not going to tell you that you were right. Ese orgullo, ese orgullo. But now I do. I'll have conversations with her, and she's like, "Ya ves, ya ves." I'm like, "I know."
Te dije.
Oh gosh. No, yeah. Thinking back, I had a moment too that in my 30s, I had a flip. Like there was something that flipped and said, like, okay, yeah, vamos, let's make some real deep changes. So like my mid 20s, where I was still kind of like, bouncing around here and there and coping in very unhealthy ways. Like, I could fully disclose, like I was really treading the lines there with alcohol dependency,
Yeah,
right?
and
there
we
was there,
need to talk about that because that is much more common than I think people talk about. Because I don't know about you, but before, in those ages, 20s, early 30s, when I would drink, like I had to at least drink until I was buzzed, if not drunk, And it's like that's not necessarily like the way to do it. Like you can actually enjoy one glass of wine and stop there. Like you don't and it's almost like we were self-medicating, right? Like to not think about things that are really difficult.
yes, yes, absolutely. That is to the T. It's what was happening, right? It's like that self medication. And it's like we didn't have other medicina at the time. We didn't know about it. And that's what was so accessible, and it was so normal. I think that's the scary part for me. Is like how normal it was. And there's different levels, because I just remember like this is normal, and then I would go to a different like circle of people, and they would be like, you have a problem. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, these other people, we all do this, and you're just too strict. You no te gusta vivir la vida. And so like I think it's so important what you're speaking to, of like that, who you're around and how they're going to influence like how you see the world, and your mental health, and then physically, our bodies. And I think that's something that, one, going back, it's like, you know going back to what you're saying, it's like I would tell myself, like, you don't have to drink that way. In fact, I highly suggest that you take, a big break from it for like a long time, until you find a relationship with yourself first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think if you look at our neighborhoods and you see that liquor stores are on every other block, when it's harder to build like quality schools and libraries and all these things that are actually more nourishing for our communities, but it's so easy to, have liquor stores everywhere. It makes sense. Plus, there's so many jokes about liquor and alcohol, the like, oh, it's so funny, like to have the tequila and to have the shots, and like have it all super accessible. Um, yeah. So I think we shouldn't blame ourselves for falling into that self medication because it was so accessible and so easy to fall into it, but also just to look back at ourselves with love and be like, oh, you didn't know any better, and now that we know that cultura cura, and we can make our altars and we can take time out in nature, with ourselves and with our friends and people that love us, and then we know that that's the medicina that will actually help us get to a better place with ourselves. Uh,
Oh my goodness. Yes, yes, yes. I think that is vital. Like I wish there would have been. Now we're having more conversations about ancestral healing, y la cultura cura. Um Back then, I mean, like like I think about like the music we were listening to. Like, do you remember what was your jam? Like, what was the song? What songs come to mind?
Honestly, the songs I think about are the songs that piss me off more. Like, Ain't No Fun, I freaking hate that song. Um, because there's so many songs that talk down about women, and um, it's like sexuality is always treated as this evil, like, oh, and specifically if you're a woman, like you're a hoe or you're this or you're that. It's so, um, I'm really loving the fact that I found underground hip hop back in that time because, the songs that didn't get popular as much, um, And, you know, like hip hop is such a beautiful form, but when it gets commercialized, there's a certain formula that they started to follow, that sold with white people, who wanted to pretend they were gangsters and stuff, so I don't know. I love underground hip hop, but the commercial stuff, like that's what I think about like during that time when I was at parties and I would just like hear the DJ play that darn song again. I'm like, really? Like, don't you have anything better to play?
It's like, come on, there's like a billion songs in the world. Yeah, I think about like because I think music will always be such a stamp of your life, like what songs we were listening to, what were you feeling. So it's interesting, like for me, like one of the songs that like, that I was like, and I heard this more like in high school, but then like it just kept playing out. It's like, like make it clap, like, like all the and it makes me associate and like, back in the day I was like, oh, I used to go to Victoria's Secret and spend all my money in hopes that I would have some confidence, feel good about my body, love my body. And I just like, if there was a store if you needed to find me, that's where I was at, just going through and just like, this will make me feel like a goddess. This will make me feel like I will be given the experience of, like a beautiful like sexual experience that I had dreamed of, right? And that honestly I wasn't getting. And so, and then that would lead to like, then okay, this didn't do it. So then, okay, fine, alcohol. Let me just get out of my body completely. And so a lot of it, like you said, and I really appreciate you saying that. It's like we want to go back to those parts and love on those parts because son como partes that that had like they were at war. They were at war with a lot of things, and they only had certain, you know, I'm gonna say weapons, right, to defend itself. And for me, it was like alcohol. For me, it was, you know, shopping, knowing that. And I'm like, where did I get the money? Like, so the other advice is like, gosh, if I could go back and like tell myself like all that is not going to give you what you think. But if you saved up, if you, everything that you bought, you saved it up, you could have traveled more. You could have seen the world on a whole different like lens, and you would have been te hubiera sentido like chiquita, but in a good way. Like there's so much more out there than what you're seeing, and I think that would have opened up my mind a lot more at that time. And I envy a lot of this generation because they're doing it. They're traveling more. They're more intentional. So um, that's how I know.
Yes. And you will be seeing Oaxaca soon, so that's exciting.
Yes, yes, yes. And that's where it's the healing part. It's like going like, okay, I didn't do that. I didn't have that. I love her even through everything she had to do, and I'm not going to exile her. I'm not going to exile her for what what feels like they were mistakes. They were launching pads. They were launching pads because you know we found other ways eventually. So that means that she didn't give up.
Right. And to be real, I mean, war is waged on women of color. Like, it's not like it was imaginary that we were dealing with this stuff. Even now, as a person who's had more experience, I still, um, as a person that has been an executive director for a couple of organizations, been through so much harm that has been very traumatizing. And only now that I'm able to step back from those organizations and be in a place that's much more healing and loving, I can see again like what I'm worth. And I wish that that sense of self-worth I would have had with me all along, because I feel like it would have prevented me going through some of the things that I did. But as you said, like you can only you can't really go back in time, but if we can at least love ourselves through all of that and say that that experience, that knowledge is going to help us with the rest of our lives and with the way that we raise our kids, biological and not, um, and our communities.
Yeah, that's so powerful. And I love everything you just said and how you know, all of it is connected, all of it. And so, talking about like we have different roles, right? And so these themes, as I noticed myself like in my mid 20s and early 30s, that um even though, for example, I stopped coping with like alcohol, right? That there's a concept that I learned that gave me a lot of like, it just really opened my eyes, that when someone is going through alcoholism and they are able to stop drinking but don't process, right? Don't really process why, just the wounds, right? The wounds still stay there, and they have a term called dry drunk, meaning, yeah, you're not drinking, but you're still making decisions out of that place,
Mm.
right? The anger is still there. You're still consumed by it. So, um, and I feel like that was a part of me too at some point, and it came across in the theme of like just giving, giving, giving at work, right? And then being used at some of the like places that I worked at or became a leader in, because I was like, yes, yes, thank you for the opportunity, thank you so much, and just like the palatable like Latina, like yes, and then feeling all these things and still not being fully conscious about it, but feeling it and then internalizing and then blaming myself. So that theme was still operating in there. And I think now it's definitely, there's been a lot of more healing around that and boundary setting. But yeah, it kind of then jumps into another area of your life if you don't really take the time to heal.
Yes. So we're not no longer thanking people for letting us work ourselves to the bone for, like working 80 hours instead of the 40 hours that they're paying us.
Yes. You know who we are thinking though? We are thinking 96.5 FM LP radio station for just the broadcasting of this amazing show, Que Madre, and all the other amazing shows that are part of this radio station. You are here listening to Ana Rosa Rizzo Centino, amazing mujer, Ali Cortez a las órdenes, and missing our amazing soul sister, Siobhan Hoover. And it's been in partnership with Que Madre, Bienestar CCC, and Warrior Mother. Just want to make sure I give a shout out to the station as we're talking about this.
Thank you so much. We have 65 videos on our KZAA YouTube channel. So if you ever missed a show, you can always check it out there. We also have 83 followers, and so help us get to 100.
That's really good. I mean, it's a really brand new YouTube channel. So
Yes.
ah, good job. Thank you, Anna. You upload them and you thank you so much. Thank you so much. And really appreciate being part of this just this beautiful connection where we could just have a safe place to talk about the journeys we've been in, and hopefully just like inspire, empower, uplift, and just like dismantle stigmas around you know a lot of areas.
Who we are. There's so many stigmas associated to being Chicana, being a woman of color, those of us who identify as queer. Yeah, so loving ourselves in all of who we are is so important.
All parts, absolutely. So as we're getting closer to wrapping up our show today, like what would be some other advice, some like for your younger, your mid 20s, early 30s self?
Above all, quiérete, amate, love yourself, like, because from that flows everything else.
Mm,
And don't put yourself last.
mm, mm. I love that. That's so powerful. Don't put yourself last. I think that definitely would have resonated so much. I remember looking for I remember like looking for answers, looking for ways, and um I think if I had found that, that would have definitely like landed deep in my soul. It's landing now. So I can only imagine back then. I think for me, just one of the things that I'm still working through is our money stories, like my money story. Um and the reason I know I have to work on this is because like I've talked to other people who just they don't deal with the self-doubt or the imposter syndrome around like, being okay with, knowing your worth and charging your worth, and then like not negotiating, just being like, it's this or nada. And I still find that I get really inspired and still struggle with it, frankly. So I think one of the things is like I would have liked to have started a little bit more about that money journey, about learning about investing, about what is the true meaning of freedom when it comes to like financial freedom, um, and reclaim that definition in a way that made more sense to me at that time.
Right, coming from a place of abundance instead of scarcity. But that's so difficult when you grow up in a working class immigrant household where everything feels so tight, you know? Um, so like I don't know without someone else mentoring me how I would have gotten to that place. So yeah, definitely I agree with that. The imposter syndrome though I think is an interesting thing to explore because I'm realizing now that maybe the reason I experienced that is because to a certain extent we are imposters because this capitalist society wasn't built for us.
Yeah.
So the reason why we're experiencing this is because there's a dissonance between that reality of this capitalist nonprofit industrial complex and then us actually wanting to uplift communities and seeing things in a very different way that it's structured. So the reason we feel like imposters is because we actually are, because we're not capitalists, so we're trying to change things in a structure that doesn't make sense and hasn't made sense for this country or any country for a very long time. So it's time to change it all.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I love that, and it's so true because we can own it. It's like, you know what? I think that that helps us free us to like, you know what? I am an imposter, right? It's like I am. I know that this isn't me, and that could like open different doors of how you think about yourself, how you think about the world. And one thing I like about the term imposter syndrome is that is syndrome part, right? I mean, it's different symptoms that are occurring over and over and over. So that means it can be healed. The good news is that that can't be healed. Sometimes I think along the way I was kind of told like the message I got about imposter syndrome is like you have it. Just manage it. Deal with it. It is what it is. It's part of being, one. I heard it was part of being one a woman. And then it's like, oh, it's part of being, like a woman of color. I was like, and I think we're saying, like there's I'm like, no, I'm gonna resist that. Like let's yeah, it is, but it can be healed, you know.
That's the beautiful part is all of us can be healed
Yeah.
and you are not broken. You are loved. You are beautiful. And we will see you next time on Thursday at 6 p.m. on KZAA 96.5 FM.
Mwah!
Thank you for listening.